these buildings are intimidating. Talking to attorneys and police are intimidating. So we're here to make sure that the victim feels that there's someone at their side and that they are not alone. We provide support, as you're hearing a lot about, case information and case updates, information about victims' rights. We are here to also make sure that victims are able to easily obtain essential paperwork, such as a copy of their order of protection that was issued in the court. Victims have a right to be informed, they have a right to be heard, and they have a right to participate in this process. We also provide counseling and social services, court accompaniment, we'll go to court with them, and all of our services essentially are on site. We depend very heavily on our relationships with our partners. Our partners are our city agencies that we work with, our community-based agencies, and our charitable organizations. So we do everything we can to assess the client's needs and often reach out to our partners and colleagues, and I believe some of them have even joined us just to kind of observe what we're here to talk about today, so it's good to see them here. The barriers that a domestic violence victim may be facing range from fear to language to lack of knowledge about resources to lack of knowledge of how I access those resources, just to name a few, and I'm sure the list can go on. Our office appreciates the stress that a victim is under, and we want to do as much as we can, and we make diligent efforts in our staffing, our trainings, and our community outreach to address and help victims overcome these barriers. I'd like to just speak a little bit more in detail about these barriers and efforts that our office is making to make sure that we're sensitive to that. An example is how we're dedicated to creating a welcoming environment is by having interpreters available to assist in our cases. In addition to the vast range of languages available by way of our office interpreter services, I have with me today one of my staff, Sandrine Firmino. So I'm going to ask her to stand up. There's a lot of people. Sandrine is West African. Sandrine speaks French, Portuguese, and a native dialect of Cape Verde Island, as well as Spanish. So we do as much as we can to try to make sure also in our staffing that we are seeking out the ability to make sure that people that we are bringing in are going to create immediately the ability to make people feel as comfortable as possible. A further explanation of how we assist with services and support is by way of some of the details in our social services assessments that we provide. So what we are doing with each and every domestic violence victim that is brought to us by an assistant district attorney, as Audrey and Janine described so well, it is a part of our protocol to make sure that all of our domestic violence victims are introduced to our unit to learn about our services. Well, we do safety planning, which is the most important thing next to everything else that's going on in their life, that they're safe. They feel safe either in their home or they have a safe way of making a plan to exit the home. And we do this each and every day, all day long. We're actually open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on the weekends from 9 to 5 and many, many holidays. If a person chooses to stay in a relationship, we will work on a plan to help enhance their safety. Not everyone is ready to leave. It takes a number of times of reaching out for help to make the decision that's going to work for you. We also provide screening and advocacy for benefits. There are a wide range of benefits that often people are not always aware of that may help them with financial or housing, health benefits that they may be eligible for. We work with a wonderful new and exciting program called Single Stop, which gives us the ability to better screen for our benefits. And we're able to sit down and ask someone a series of questions and enter that into a wonderful computer program and access 44 odd benefits to find out what you're eligible for. Sometimes those benefits might be additional assistance with your utility bills, a cell phone. They may be information about reduced rates on using a Metro card. Whatever types of things that are going on in people's lives, it is further complicated by domestic violence. So we really want to look at the life issues that are also going on so we can help someone address those issues. I can't stress again enough what Janine stressed. We want everyone to know that it is safe for undocumented immigrants to come to our office. Often, fear prevents victims from seeking help. Batterers often threaten their victims that if they seek help, they will be deported. That is not true. In fact, victims of domestic violence may be eligible to obtain legal status due to the fact that they've been a victim of domestic violence. So we will look at that and make the appropriate referrals to some of our partners in our immigration community as well. The most important thing I want to stress is that the services we provide are based on each individual's needs, in addition to their readiness and their willingness to receive those services. Our services are free, optional, no one is forced to talk with us. Whatever they want to talk with us about, we're there to just figure out how we're able to help. We're here to help that person develop a plan that works for their life. Our assistance in our crime victim unit is not linked to what happens in a criminal court case. There are some victims that are going to be ready to be more, let me use that word, Janine, cooperative with the case, and we're going to work with the uncooperative and the cooperative person, because the reality is that the reason why someone may not feel as encouraged to talk with the attorney may be because of these life issues. So we're going to work with that person at any stage of where they're feeling about this case. We are very sensitive to the needs of each community, and we're always looking for ways to increase our ability to be more sensitive. We welcome that you are here today to receive us, and hopefully can take some of this information back to the African community and help us with that. And as Janine also mentioned, our office goes out to schools and community-based groups to conduct curriculums and presentations on healthy relationships. And our unit has had the honor of joining Community Affairs along with the Assistant District Attorneys. And I have to tell you, October was probably our busiest month ever, as it was Domestic Violence Awareness Month, because we were uptown, downtown, we were all over the place, night and day, and making sure that we were getting the word out and shining the light on domestic violence. But we do it beyond October, so just keep that in mind. What we're working really hard to do through these presentations, through talking to you today, making ourselves available if you have a question about how you can help someone who's come to you and said that they are experiencing violence in their families, is to plant seeds. And one of the things that I think we want to do is just know that each person that we speak to can tell another person. And ultimately, by planting the seeds of information, we're able to spread information and resources, because often people just don't know what services are available to them. And I've gone out for years with Audrey and with Janine and with Community Affairs, and one of the things that has always been the most exciting thing to me is when people say, I just didn't know, and I feel like just one more person knows what we do and that we're here to help you. So we're going to double the amount of people by each of you taking it out to maybe just one other person and the information that you've taken today. Our goal is to help victims heal from the trauma that they've experienced, and ultimately to restore hope and to help them rebuild lives. And in some situations, potentially take their quality of life to a level that maybe it was not even functioning at prior to the victimization. In closing, I would like to add that we're happy that you joined us yet again. I want to keep saying that, and continue to help us get the word out about domestic violence and about our services that we have available here. Thank you very much.
One of the things that we realize when someone comes to us as a victim of domestic violence is, as nice as Beverly is and Sandrine, they might not want to deal with someone who works for the district attorney's office. So it's very important for us to have partnerships with outside agencies. And our office is really blessed today to have Sanctuary for Families here. Sanctuaries for Family has been working with victims of violence, and I should say victims of crimes against women, I don't even know for how many years. And they're extremely well respected. They've received numerous awards. And we're very lucky today to have Mariama Diallo and Angela Yaboa, who are going to talk today about some of the services that Sanctuary for Families offers as a non-government organization.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. As Audrey mentioned, we are from Sanctuary for Families. My name is Angela Yaboa. I am a staff attorney with Sanctuary for Families, and Mariama. She is a social worker. Sanctuary for Families is the largest nonprofit organization in New York State dedicated exclusively to serving domestic violence victims and their children. We have a very holistic approach to working with our survivors. We offer lots of different services. Sanctuary has 2 departments. We have a clinical department, which Mariama will elaborate on, and we also have a legal department. As I indicated, I'm a staff attorney. I work with victims. I represent them in numerous cases in family court. We represent our victims, obtain orders of protection in family court, custody, whenever there's custody issues, child support. We have immigration attorneys at Sanctuary for Families who also help our victims with various remedies that are available to domestic violence survivors. And I have to mention that all of our services are free. There is no income requirement. The only requisite is that the person has to be a victim of domestic violence. We also have what's called our public benefits advocate, who helps victims obtain housing, or if there are issues regarding public benefits that they may have. We also have someone that's able to liaise with them and help them to resolve whatever issues they may have. I think one of the most important things that we do is we basically try to empower our victims so that they may be able to navigate their way through, whatever issues or whatever, the court system can be extremely trying. Once the victim leaves the home, they're faced with numerous obstacles, legal issues, benefit issues, housing issues. Sanctuary is here to make the victim whole again. I also neglected to mention that we also have shelters available to our victims as well. We have confidential DV shelters. Our offices, we have one office, our main office, which is in a confidential location, is in Manhattan, and then we have space also in the New York City Family Justice Center. We have space in the Brooklyn Family Justice Center, in the Bronx Family Justice Center, as well as the Queens Family Justice Center. I fortunately work in the Bronx Family Justice Center. So Sanctuary is here, whatever services that they may need, and like I said, it's all free. They just have to be a victim of domestic violence in order to be able to access our services. And Mariama will elaborate a little bit more on our clinical services that we offer.
Thank you, Angela. So my name is Mariama, and I am originally from Guinea. And I speak French and a lot of African dialects, which make it very easy for me to provide services to the African community, because they come to someone who is very sensitive to their culture, who speaks their language and understand exactly where they are from. So within the clinical department, we provide counseling services, in fact. And this can be either in one-on-one, individual, or in group. One-on-one, it depends. Sometimes clients, they come in and they prefer to be in a very private space where they share their stories only with one counselor. Or sometimes they want to be in group just because they want to create that community they did not maybe have for a very, very long time, where they can share experiences and know that what they are going through is not only from one single woman. A lot of women are going through the same. So in the clinical, we have services for the women, but also for the children, because sometimes the children also are exposed to the violence. So we provide services to the whole family, not only to the adult. So as Angela said, we have the shelters, yes, but when they go into shelter, they need to come to the office sometimes to meet, with the counselors and talk about their need. And needs are very diverse, and at Sanctuary, we try to help them to meet these needs, from applying for housing, for public benefit, going to the hospital, having Medicaid, etc., etc. So we try to help the client to meet the basic human need, and then we can focus on counseling services. And I wish that I could just say I have just a few clients, because if I said that, that would mean, domestic violence is not widespread in the African community. Unfortunately, no. I have many clients from different African countries, from the western of Africa, Senegal, Mali, Ivory Coast, etc., and the Maghreb, and the Comor Island, etc., etc. And honestly, the abuse they go through, it's sometimes very extreme cases. It could be physical, psychological, sexual, financial, etc., etc. So I think, I'm really glad to be here today and share this information with you. And we have a hotline number. If you have anyone you need to refer, we have business card here. You can take the cards, and please, contact us if you need someone who needs help. Thank you.
I also neglected to mention that language is not a barrier. Our staff speaks over 30 different languages. So if you have, if you know people in the community who do need services, please do not let language be an issue. And again, immigration is also not an issue. No one's going to report anybody to INS if they're undocumented. We're here to make our clients whole. Before I leave, I'll just briefly just tell a story of a client who came to Sanctuary. She was actually my very first client. And when she came to us, she was extremely broken. She had a young son. She came from an extremely severe DV situation. Her husband was from Nigeria. She was from the Ivory Coast. She was brought here under the pretense of, reconnecting with her husband, and came to find out that she was here basically to be a maid for her husband and his newfound American girlfriend. There was a lot of DV. She ended up getting pregnant. She found Sanctuary through word of mouth, so this is why forums like this is extremely important. A friend of hers, she worked at a beauty shop, and she was telling a friend casually about what she was going through, and the friend referred her to Sanctuary. I'm happy to say that 3 years later, this woman was able to move out of her home. She has permanent housing now. She's now, at the time that she came to Sanctuary, she was undocumented. We were able to link her with an immigration attorney so that she was able to gain access to some of the remedies that are available to domestic violence victims. She now is a citizen. She has full custody of her son, and she owns her own hair salon. And these are some of the things that we seek to do for our clients, because we know that as soon as they walk out of that situation, there's other obstacles that they have to deal with, and we're here to help them to try to navigate through that. So, thank you.
And also, I know we're just talking for the African community here, but if it's Sanctuary for Families provides services to everyone, not only the African community. So, in case you know someone, who is in need.
Thank you.
So we're gonna, if you have any questions, we're gonna direct it. You have the whole panel that is here to make the questions. So I'm gonna ask them to come this way. We have a few questions, so feel free. This is the time. Encourage as much as to do all the questions. They will try to answer all the questions. Okay?
So are there any questions?
Here's a question.
Good afternoon. Good evening. My name is Carl Omona. We are the public reporters, and we're happy to have this opportunity. And I was speaking with Ms. Colon about it, and this is the first time people are doing this, and I think it's a good opportunity for us to actually express our views in these cases. Let me go straight to the questions, if I may. After 9/11, 2003, if you remember, Iraq was invaded after the US 9/11 attack. There were a lot of issues that brought up here in the United States. Of course, here in Manhattan, New York City, where a lot of people were picked up randomly, non-documented individuals. They were picked up over 800 Nigerian immigrants. I don't know whether documented or not, but they were picked up and shipped back to their countries. This is not just one situation. you also have a case where those who have no documentation are afraid to come up here. Going through, you come into 80 Center Street, you know, you're like, are they trying to say you up? You know, there's that fear in immigrants, which of course African American community go through, and minority, people of color, go through in this country. And here in New York City, of course, in particular, if you want to put it that way. My question to you is, I mentioned that you said they shouldn't be afraid, you know, to come to you. To many of you have spoken about not being afraid they should come. But more often than not, that's not the case. You know, so I'm just wondering, how do you address the issue of people going through this violence, being victimized here in Manhattan or New York State or New York City? They are immigrants, they are undocumented. When you say don't fear, how do you explain don't fear in that situation? That's my number one question. Second, you mentioned that you can actually use that process to provide them with documentation. How does that work? Because in Capitol Hill, you know, that's a different situation. They don't want to hear about, I mean, I'm not trying to label anyone. They don't want to hear anything about you documenting immigrants. And Obama administration has been accused several times by the Republican Party as to trying to document legal immigrants. And Americans talk about them paying their taxes, and they wouldn't want to use their tax money to service illegal immigrants who are in this country. So how do you negotiate that, the nuances of, you know, undocumented and now the victim domestic violence, and then they're going through this? How do you balance that situation in that case? My last question, if
Can they answer those two questions first?
Oh, okay. I mean,
yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Sure.
So this is going to be a team answer approach, okay? Because there's a lot going on. We are relying in part on you to get the word out that if you are a victim of a domestic violence situation and you come to the district attorney's office, we will not call the authorities to deport anyone. All of our victims who come, if they're African, if they're from any other country, we do not report. Now, we understand that there are people that fear that we may not be genuine in our commitment. So that's where we're going to have to rely on you. What we're trying to do now is to begin the dialogue to establish a basis for people to get to know us as well, so that you have some experience with us, so that you can rely on what we say, right? Okay, so I'm telling you that as a policy, victims of domestic violence do not get reported by the district attorney's office or by the court system. Even if we discover that you are not here legally, we do not report. And because domestic violence is such a problem in so many immigrant communities, the government has actually created a particular visa called the U visa, which specifically addresses the legal status of a woman or an individual who is the victim of domestic violence. And here I'm going to need to get some help. So I'm going to turn over the U visa question.
Well, I mean, basically, like I should say, like Janine stated, and just to go back for 1 second to one of the things she said, we realize that not everybody's going to want to come to 80 Center Street. You know, let's face it, we're the man. That's what people tell me all the time. You know, you work for the man, you are the man, Audrey. But we go out into communities and we talked a little bit about what we do. Like we're sitting here today. You know, this is something that is, you know, new for our office. We did these forums for many different forums for different types of media. We'll go anywhere. As I'll tell you, we will go anywhere. We also have an office up in the Harlem State Office Building. Some people feel more comfortable going to the Harlem State Office Building. You know, on the 7th floor, we're in there. People feel comfortable there, we'll go there. When I tell you we go everywhere, we've gone into hair salons to talk to people. We go into schools. And part of this is, I think, as we just can't stay in this building because people are afraid of this building.
Absolutely.
We have to go out into the community. You know, so it's great that we're here, but you're going to see us wherever. And if anybody has a place that you think we need to be going, please let us know because we are willing to go. And the second part of this too is going into the schools because I cannot underestimate to you, overemphasize, I'm sorry, to you, the importance of us really starting with our children and teaching them as to what is a healthy relationship and not healthy relationship. Because the last thing that I want to see is a child who witnessed their mother being beat up be my defendant later on. Because that's a failure of all of us. So I think, number one, it's so important for us to go out into the community. Because I think when we go out into the community, people then, like you said, you saw people and you hugged. You know, if Famoud's here, you hugged him, you saw him, you know. You see us not just as the district attorney's office, but as the individuals we are who really care about the issues of domestic violence. You know, and STU visas, they're very complicated, and unfortunately I don't think any of us up here are immigration attorneys, and I'm not, and what I can say is we're very good at making referrals to immigration attorneys. But as they talked about, you know, if somebody is a victim of domestic violence and they are undocumented, we do make referrals to organizations like Sanctuaries for Family all the time. They're one of the leading organizations, not only in New York City, but probably in this country. They lead a lot of that conversation on immigration rights. And we make referrals to all these organizations that have these wonderful immigration attorneys that can help fight for victims of domestic violence to get permanent status. And one of the things that we do as an office is part of a U visa application that we do fill out certifications for victims of domestic violence. So people are always, I think, you can't say people are not going to be afraid, but we put our hand out and we try to make ourselves accessible.
Yeah, one more thing, I mean, so how do you, I mean, I agree with you 100%, we want to work with you, that's what we're here. How do you take away that fear, how do you remove that fear within our community? Being able to come here or come anywhere, wherever you want.
Well, I think part of it is you have to respect people, and once you start to respect people, and I respect you,
right.
You know, I think part of the reason why sometimes people are fearful of the government or the DA's office, number one, they don't know who we are. You know, sometimes people don't understand. You know, that's why Janine was trying to explain even the system. You know, I remember you talked about your first case. I remember my first case. I was meeting with someone who happened to be from Greece, and he was a victim of, I think, petty larceny. Someone had stole something from him. And at the end, I was like, oh, let me, you know, I was giving him some witness fees, you know, giving him money to get back home. And he was taking out his money to pay me. And that had to do with what his culture was and what his experiences were. So, you know, I think part of what we try to do is to take people where they are and walk with them. I mean, part of it is, you know, you can't be what I need you to be. You need to be who you are as a victim of any crime. And you're going to be afraid, but if I'm respectful of you, hopefully you're going to have more faith in the system if I treat you with respect.
Oh, absolutely. Can I ask one more question? You want to ask? I was going to ask, I'm sorry, I don't mean to, you know, I want to ask one more question, then I'm going to go down. There are situations as well where some illegal immigrants who were invited to come to Federal Plaza for processing, but they were rounded up. We had such cases as well.
Those are the facts.
Yeah, you know, so again, I was going to ask you, what's your manpower? You know, nobody knows that you exist actually. People are not aware, the awareness is not there. Sometimes you call, like, I have legal society, then maybe you partner with them, and then you find out about legal society. Legal aid, absolutely. Sometimes you call them, nobody picks up the phone. You know, you have those, you know, bureaucracy, it takes whatever, and the phone doesn't go through. They pick up, you can't even go through their office. So those are also what people are doing. How are we not sure? What's the similarity? What are the differences? And how are you funded? You know, funding, how do you, is it, I mean, funding, how do you, who is funding the organization, you know, what you would do? So, I mean.
Well, Sanctuary, we receive both private as well as government donations. We receive, one of our largest grants is through the Violence Against Women Act. We also have numerous private funders. We work with a lot of law firms, major law firms. We do a lot of fundraising throughout the year. So we have both private as well as governmental donations that come to our agency.
Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank the organizers very much. I think this is a very critical training that was conducted. I just want to make several comments. First of all, you know, I am the chairman of Islamic Cultural Center, which runs a preventive agency in the Bronx. Most of us here live in areas where 7 out of 10 children being born out of wedlock, number one. Number two, according to the last census, about 75% of the immigrants, African immigrants in the Bronx, are Muslims. And in our agency, we have 3 Muslim families. Whatever the reason is, their children are now being placed in the homes of gays and lesbians. And number 3, there are so much incentives placed in domestic violence victim cases. So my question is, are there preventive mechanisms for our community so that 20 years from now, 70% of our children will not be raised by single parents, number one. Number two, our religious rights will not be violated by having our Muslim children or Christian children raised by what we deem unnatural relationships. No matter what the law says, we are religious people who believe that a child must be raised by mom and dad in a loving, peaceful home. I know that the argument always said, you know, the safety comes first. But in most cases, in my experience, we have seen about 7 African divorces from, unfortunately, overreacting social service workers whom have now been fired by us, knowing that they were lying to the government and they're no longer part of these agencies. Do you have mechanisms to protect our community from abuse of the system as well as leaving our community to be single-parent household? Thank you.
I myself am from Ghana, West Africa, and I was raised by, initially when I, from maybe about birth till about 6 years old, I was raised in a dual parent household with a mother and a father. However, one thing that you did say that stood out is that it has to be a loving environment. And what we're here to do is we're here to protect all parties, not just the children, but any party who is in a situation that's not a loving situation, that's not a healthy situation. We do recognize that there are some bad apples in whatever situation that you're in, whatever organization that you're in. There are some, some negative issues that you may deal with. But I think what's really important is that we don't want there to be a cycle of abuse. We don't want these same children that are raised in these households that may not necessarily be ideal to be adults who move on later on in their lives to become adults that are incarcerated or adults that are in the system. We are here to stop that. And I think one of the things that we're doing to stop it is by having forums like these where we can have discussions. No one is here to try to invade or impede on anyone's religious beliefs. But I think the ultimate thing that matters is that people are safe, and they're safe and free to live their lives in a way that is respectful and in a way that can be honored. And it is unfortunate, like I said earlier, that there are situations that have a negative impact on these families. But ultimately, the most important thing is that these victims and these children are safe.
Good evening. My name is Nuruddin Sulaiman. I'm the Imam for Nuruddin Islamic Charity Organization on 3rd Avenue in the Bronx, and I'm the founder of the organization. I thank you for organizing this program, and I want you to continue to let us have more of this, because African community, we are greater than this. We need to spread it to other people to come and attend the next one. So that is my comment about it. My first question is number 1. We are talking about domestic violence, which doesn't concern women alone. There are so many men that have been abused, which I can tell you a lot, because as a leader of the community, I've witnessed where a woman is telling the husband to pee on the floor. When the man was saying, no, I want to pee, please, don't let me pee here, pee on the floor. Pee on the floor, and the man pee on the floor. He peed. This man was beating the man. but the man didn't want to call police because of our culture back home in Africa. Especially from my own culture in Yoruba. When you call police to your husband, or husband call police to the wife, the whole community will neglect you. If you walk around, you will be walking as a shameful person. So when we talk of women abusing men, and we still have women too, men too abusing women, which I had the opportunity, there was one guy in my own community, he always beat his wife. I talked to him as a religious leader, I quoted from the Quran, he didn't agree with me. One day he was about to park his own car. Another woman from American community was struggling to park the same car in the same spot. This man was doing the same thing with the woman, and the woman came out and beat him mercilessly. Then I asked him, why can't you beat her back? He says, I don't want to go to jail. But you are beating your own wife inside your house because we told them not to call police. Now if you beat her again, I'm going to call police on you. So what are we doing to prevent men that are being abused, like women too? Because it's not only women, both sides. It involves both sides. That's my first question. Number two, is there any rules that you like? There was a day I was giving a lecture in my community and I told somebody that, look, leave the sin before the sin leaves you. When we finished that lecture, this guy came out and said, Imam, in front of other people, look, I was about to sell a drug and I have it here. But your lecture touched my heart. Now I'm putting it down and I'm taking it over. I will never sell drugs again. So religious leader can play a lot of roles because prevention is even better than cure. It will cost American taxpayers little money than a lot of money. So why can't we involve some religious leaders on spreading this message so that we won't have a lot of it the way we are having it? So those are my questions. Thank you.
I'm so glad to hear a question like that. I do, in fact, a lot of outreach within the African community. And when I just came in today, I saw some imams, and I was so glad to know that I can talk to the imams, because I think no one deserves abuse, either a woman or a man. We all need safety. We all need to know that, we are not exposed to violence. Within the African community, I think it's a little harder maybe for a man to come forward and say, yes, I'm being abused by my wife. But I think this is where I'm going to need your help, because they have the right to come out also to say, I am being abused. I have few male clients, I'm seeing African male clients, and I'm very glad that they came to me for services. And I think if we all work together, we're going to play a very important role, and maybe in a few years we can say, yes, we're going to work on ending domestic violence within the African culture.
Madame Myriam, s'il vous plaît, parce que je vais parler en français. D'accord. Si vous pouvez interpréter pour moi, s'il vous plaît.
C'est génial, okay. J'aurais voulu faire ça en français. D'accord.
Célestin Gourbala, c'est mon nom. Rédacteur en chef du journal Intégration.
Plus fort, on ne t'entend pas. On ne t'entend pas. Allez.
Okay. Célestin Gourbala is my name.
Ok, d'accord.
Rédacteur en chef du journal Intégration et correspondant du journal camerounais Le Messager.
D'accord.
J'ai 3 questions. Et je voudrais qu'on parle de journalisme cette fois-ci. La toute première, c'est que, vous savez, je suis venu ici pour des chiffres. Et je suis très heureux que vous nous ayez donné des chiffres. Je remarque que nous parlons d'environ 2724 cas de violences domestiques. En tant que journaliste africain, je serais très enchanté d'avoir des chiffres concernant typiquement la communauté africaine, parce que je dois informer mon journal et orienter sur la communauté africaine.
So the gentleman is looking at a newspaper, and he's saying that you see the statistics that are included in your packets, because you have packets from the mayor's office about domestic violence statistics, and he's asking if there are any statistics for the African community. Alors, on a laissé sur la question, alors s'il y avait des statistiques pour la communauté d'Africains. Et puis la réponse pour ça, c'est que à ce moment-là, à ce point-là, on n'a pas de statistiques seulement pour la communauté. At this moment in time, we do not have statistics just geared for the African community.
Bon, tout de même, est-ce que nous devons croire que vous nous avez invités parce que la situation est alarmante, c'est-à-dire lorsque nous écoutons, peut-être parce que dans la communauté africaine, vous avez constaté qu'il y a des cas de violence.
Oui.
Ok, cela nous permet d'attaquer. Si vous permettez, nous pouvons continuer pour l'autre question.
Okay, attendez, je vais traduire, d'accord?
Ok.
Okay, so he said if there are no statistics for the African community, are we to understand in the African community that the issue of domestic violence is an alarming issue and an issue that needs attention in the African community? And the answer is yes. Oui?
Non, I'm sorry, I wanted to je suis Frank Gutenberg, je suis le directeur de publication du journal Intégration. So I wanted to bring just some precision.
Yes.
He is asking the question,
Yes.
do you invite us here
Yes.
just because you see that this situation is being very, taken much more
In African community. In African
yeah. Or it's just because, you know, it's just because you just wanted to come here and listen to what you're going to say. And the first question they asked was that he wanted to know if, because we as African newspaper, we direct our information towards African people. We wanted to give them specific number
Right.
regarding African community.
Right.
We don't have figures for the Africans, we don't separate the figures by community. Unfortunately, we don't separate them by the Chinese, Latino, or African community. So we cannot, unfortunately, give you numbers to bring back to the newspaper that specify what the numbers are in the African community. But we're not asking you here because domestic violence is an issue nationwide, and it happens to affect you as well. We're asking you here because we have dealt with members of the African community, specifically. And we have seen that it is also a problem, a significant problem in the African community. And there have been substantial issues in getting people to come forward and speak to us. So we're asking you, we're enlisting your help in trying to bring the word back to the people in the community that they can come to us, because we have noticed a reluctance to come and speak with us. Alors,
ok, on peut continuer, je vous ai compris à ce niveau-là. Ok, peut-être ce sera la dernière question. Vous savez, informer, c'est prendre un risque. Informer,
oui.
Mon métier c'est d'informer en tant que journaliste. Et dans la communauté africaine, tout comme dans n'importe quelle communauté, c'est toujours prendre un risque quand un journaliste dénonce, parce que vous nous demandez de vous apporter des cas de violence.
Non.
De vous rapporter des cas de violence.
Non, pas nécessairement. The question is whether or not, si on vous demande de nous apporter des individus qui ont été des victimes des crimes.
Oui,
Okay. So I think.
Non, j'étais en train de continuer s'il vous plaît.
D'accord.
Bon, et de notre point de vue, j'ai remarqué que vous parlez aussi des Africains qui seraient les cas de fraude dans la communauté africaine. Et vous savez, honnêtement, nous sommes là dans une sorte de mafia. Et c'est très dangereux, ça dit, c'est des avocats qui sont impliqués, c'est beaucoup de personnes qui sont impliquées. Ça accroît le risque du reporter que je suis. Et la question est simple, quelle est la protection, quelle est la couverture que vous proposez aux journalistes que je suis? Parce que je vous ai dit, j'écris non seulement ici à New York, mais je suis correspondant dans plusieurs journaux dans mon pays. Et dans ma propre communauté, j'ai toujours eu ce problème, c'est-à-dire quand on a dénoncé un cas, vous savez tout ce que les gens font ici, ça se répercute parce que nous devons en tout cas nous retrouver dans la communauté. Donc, quelle est, en tant que reporter, quelle est la protection pour que je puisse faire mon travail honnêtement? Je vous remercie.
What's the question? Who wants to? So you want to help us? You tell us what the question, the whole question?
He's asking. He's saying that here as community informers, as a journalist, we always bring information to public.
Right.
Now, you know that in African community, we are very restrained, we are very close. If now we are bringing this type of news to the community, we'll ask them to come forward and express themselves. So sometime when we ask some people to come to express themselves, to come forward and express themselves, some other people are not happy. So what is the protection as a journalist, as somebody who's bringing the news, as someone who's spreading the news, to what is his protection? That's a question.
Is the concern that the community will then retaliate against the newspaper? Is that what the concern is?
That's one point. That is one point.
Yeah. Okay. And what's the other concern?
Another concern is if I can put it like a journalist right, when he's going to bring this information to the population, because always when you bring information to the population, one side will be okay, another side will be against it. So what is the protection against journalists? What is the journalist protection about from the other side who is against the information?
Well, let me ask you, what happens in other cases when you bring information that's not favorable? Is there a specific protection for journalists in other types of cases when this information that you bring is not?
Yes.
Ok. Ok. Je vais prendre un cas très classique.
D'accord.
Ok, j'ai failli mettre mon nez dans l'affaire Nafissatou.
De quoi?
L'affaire Nafissatou, ministre Oscar.
D'accord.
La communauté guinéenne a été trop renversée. C'est-à-dire, tous les Guinéens nous demandaient de laisser cette affaire, ça ne nous concerne pas. Je ne sais pas si vous entendez. Parce que nous sommes allés très loin pour retrouver une Nafissatou. On a tout fait pour essayer d'avoir, parce que c'est une affaire africaine. Donc c'était à nous, normalement, de rapporter cette histoire. Et vous avez vu, les Guinéens étaient ils étaient plus méchants envers nous autres Africains qui essayions d'avoir, parce que peut-être, ok, on a remarqué qu'il y avait peut-être autre chose derrière cette histoire. Donc c'est par rapport à cela, parce qu'il y a l'intégrité physique du journaliste qui est en jeu, et il y a le journal lui-même qui court des risques. C'est à ce niveau-là que nous essayons de voir. Je ne sais pas si c'est un peu compliqué.
Il va demander l'avis du monsieur qui a traduit avant.
Oh, can you say that in English, just what he said?
Yes.
Okay, he said that. Okay. At this time, we're taking a specific case, Nafissatou. Nafissatou, this lady, I know you guys know, you heard about it.
Yes, she's from Guinea.
So we wanted to.
Okay.
We wanted to get involved as a media to bring this, to bring information forward, to bring information to inform the population. We wanted to go in and, if I can call it, dig about for the information, but we were facing this problem with the Guinean population, because every time we ask them question, I can tell you myself, they call me many times, telling me, listen, if you put your nose in, you're gonna see. We're gonna throw all your newspaper outside. If you put it out, we're gonna throw it out. So now, he's asking about the protection. Next time, if this type of situation happens, like domestic violence, we want to get involved. We want to bring the situation to the population. What is our protection as a journalist?
Can you be specific? When you called, was the Guinean community opposing that, or was individual? Do you have like any specific individual from the Guinean community, for instance?
Just to tell you, sir, at this point I cannot answer this specifically. We ask them a question, we give them the chance to answer.
Okay, so if as an individual journalist or or as an organization,
Right.
you are being targeted by people because of your reporting and crimes are committed against you, those will be investigated and prosecuted, okay? So if you have people that are harassing you or calling you or doing things that we consider to be crimes in this country, you can report them to this office and someone will investigate them and the people that are doing that will be stopped, okay? Alors, en termes de journalistes, si quelqu'un vous attaque, ou si quelqu'un vous menace, ou si quelqu'un vous appelle tout le temps au téléphone, si c'est un crime, on peut envoyer la police ou bien nous, on peut faire une investigation ici pour arrêter les gens qui font ça. En termes de, in terms of reputation, that's a different issue, and that's not one that we can help so much on because we can stop people from being violent, we can stop people from destroying your property. We can stop people from harassing you on the phone. We can stop people from sending you threatening emails. We can do that.
Ça, en quelque sorte, c'est une sorte de protection.
Oui, ça c'est une sorte de protection, c'est vrai. Oui. D'accord? Alors, si les gens font ça, on peut aider dans cette manière.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. My name is Lisa Jones and I'm with the Daily Challenge. And this is my second family here. I've been honored enough in different capacities to work with the African community. And one of the issues that I do hear from the African women community, when it comes to these sort of issues, as you mentioned earlier, it's often compiled with the whole family of issues, meaning immigration, as one gentleman said, you're having a disproportionate, not you, but there's a disproportionate deportation, as we know, for Caribbean and African immigrants. And I work quite a bit in the immigrant community. And so you have the victim, which is first and foremost, and the issues of the victimization, meaning the children, the family as a whole, and financial, which Sanctuary for Families does a wonderful job, as well as your outreach from On and others. However, when we speak about this, it's also the abuser, because once the abuser goes to the system, then there is a criminal record created, and then that can also flag for a level of attention for deportation. So, as you mentioned earlier, that interim, I believe, mentioned earlier, where that person may go back. Now the prime source of the financial resources is now in the criminal system, whereas before, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was murder and rape were with the keywords or the key factors for deportation. That's not been the experience in the African community and Caribbean as well. So what can you assure the community in terms of, it's not that we're looking to somehow mollify or relieve the abuser at all, but that is a factor when now a criminal record is created and now everything is overwhelmed by the deportation issue of the prime breadwinner in many cases. And those are wonderful success stories which are very prevalent. I've been honored again to know many women who started small businesses, including the African community as a whole, is highly inspiring, or inspire the community by having such extreme business savvy and the quickness from the time, I believe it's either me or the mic, but I'm loud. So for having the business acumen to start your own business. So that is one element in the African community, that's one thing. But when you now have an issue that is escalated and that prime breadwinner is now on the flag, so to speak, for deportation, then a lot of other parts start moving. So I just want you to discuss, if you can, a little bit about that. The other part is that I've worked with many imams, and and some are here as well, and other partnerships. And what I do find is that when the other partners that you may have, such as healthcare companies, I formerly was a borough coordinator for Health First, Affinity, all the other health providers, which are somewhat of the first line when people, unfortunately, usually women, and I'm so happy that you did mention the incident of men being abused, But some of the first line people, the first line partners, are the people in the hospitals where it's first reported. So some of your other partnerships may want to include you being at a health fair or you partnering with that hospital where it's not something that a journalist would have to sort of take on their own. The women or the community can go to the health fair, and we have conducted, when I was at Health First, we did conduct health fairs at the mosques. Imam Kanate and others, the Malian Association, allowed us to come in. So those are the type of partnerships you may want to consider if there's so many other issues that are both culturally sensitive that you have to work with in order to provide this help. So if you can just speak upon that. Thank you.
So it's part of the reason why we like to try and see if we can get involved early. Early is better than later, right? And that's why these partnerships are so important. It's important to get to people before the violence escalates out of control. The first contact in the justice system for someone who has never been arrested before may not result in a criminal conviction. There are other things that we can do short of a criminal conviction. There are violations and there are ACDs. These are dispositions that do not require someone to have a criminal record. These do not trigger immigration consequences. And these are things that we'd like to put in place if we catch the violence early on. These things are not available once someone stabs somebody or someone tries to kill somebody. Now you're no longer in a position where you can really deal with the immigration situation as fully as you would like to, because the violence has escalated out of control. So we'd like to be able to get to the families, get to the people early on in the process to see if we can diffuse the situation. And this is where the community leaders are really of incredible importance. Because if we can get someone early and someone's being stubborn and they don't want to stop arguing with their wife, they don't want to stop the lower level behaviors, we can get them into a mandatory program that the court orders and not get them a criminal conviction. So this way they will have some help. A judge will tell them if they won't listen to a community leader, if they won't listen to their family, and if they won't listen to the person that they're having a fight with, sometimes you have to bring them to the judge and say, listen, enough is enough. You are not doing this anymore. You are going to a program and you're going to cut it out. And if you don't cut it out, the next time there may be a criminal conviction, the next time there may be consequences to your immigration. Sometimes some people do need someone to tell them that who's not someone that they're involved with. And that can happen if you catch it very early on. But it's important to catch these cases before they escalate out of control, because frankly, the person who's committed the act of violence is always sorry the day after, right? But if the limb is gone or the person's in the hospital, sorry is not going to help anybody, right? So we have to get them as early as we can. So these forums are important, the community outreach is important, everyone working together is important, us working together to bridge whatever differences and to keep the dialogue open. And it's important not to let anything hide beneath the surface, because that's when misunderstandings happen, that's when things get out of control. So it's a good point that you bring up, and that's one of the things that we can do to address the problem. Did I answer the second part of your question?
Yes. If I can also, from a legal standpoint, there's other remedies that are available to victims that are not criminal. You can go to family court, where you're the one that you initiate the process. You go to family court and you file for a family court order of protection. It's not criminal. You're not going to be arrested. Family court is in a court of, it's not criminal court. You can get certain types of orders of protection. You can't get limited orders of protection where the parties are in the home, but the respondent or the person who the petition is filed against has to refrain from certain behavior. So there's other ways, there's other creative ways that a victim can utilize in order to protect themselves and still be able to try to maintain that familiar structure.
Right, just a second part, because many times the children, when in healthcare situations, the children are always eligible for healthcare. Thank you. The children are always eligible for healthcare, pretty much 90% as long as they were born here, and even under a certain age, it was a good thing for children. But we found many families across the board of all immigrants, families, that were at times reluctant to have their children sign up for health care that they were eligible for, because they didn't want to be flagged in any scenario. So once that was happening, then all other things were out the door, because then we're seeing this influx of children that had basic childhood illnesses that weren't being treated.
So a lot of the work comes from, of course, all the community leaders, Rama, the imams, because that's usually the first order of business, the religious leaders. You know, and if that first order if an imam can speak to you, then you're less likely, or maybe that person can be calmed down at that moment. You know, yes, it may happen again and again, I'm sure you see, but that's one of the overarching issues that I've heard both in healthcare and in the community. That, you know, what about our status, and what about you know, our children, and what happens when the breadwinner leaves? And you've addressed that, but it's just something that I don't know what other steps that can be taken besides these forums, but that's the first and foremost thing that I've ever experienced in the years of being in the community as well.
And I think we do recognize that religious leaders play a vital role with a lot of our victims. I mean, I know that there's certain situations where myself and other attorneys have reached out to a religious leader through our clients, and we've been able to work things out that way. So there's lots of different creative ways that we can go about addressing this issue. I think that we just have to be able to think outside the box and do whatever our client feels is what's most comfortable for them, but at the same time maintains their safety.
Can I?
Wait, I'm sorry. There's somebody. 2 more questions because it's approaching 5 o'clock.
Good afternoon. My name is Amadou Diallo from the Guinean community, but I'm representing Futa Islamic Center here as the former president and chairman of the Community Development Corporation. Well, I want to thank you for this initiative, but what I want to say here, I believe you have to deal more with cultural sensitivity. And as people come over to the United States, the very first thing the men do, especially the Muslims, they want to bring their wife back home, someone who they left there. They do not just want to get a person who they met over here. They're thinking about how they left the suffering back home. They want to get the same thing for that particular individual over here. But what really happens, as you bring your wife over here, the moment she comes in, this is America. She doesn't no more care about your Islamic culture or the culture that you are raised in. And one thing that I want you guys really to be sensitive of is trying to reach out to the community leaders, imams, and community activists, and try to see how to work things out, to make the women to understand that at least if you are working with the man, both of you are going out to work. Maybe the man is driving a cab or he's working a car wash. Most of the women, 90% of the African women right now, they do home health aid. They work in a certain area that they got income. The money they make, they do not contribute a single cent towards the bill. A single cent. Let me be honest with you. A single cent. The problem comes from there. You understand? You spend $10,000, $15,000 to bring a woman over here. You are working, spending $2,500 every month on bill. Whatever amount of money she makes, she send it back home. The next time she builds house, if there is any conflict, you call her parents. Because you are not able to send $100 to the parents, they don't listen to you. They forget about the religion, they forget about the culture. Now the hatred comes there. You understand? Right? There is no more love, there is no more feeling. If the woman got you hungry, certain time you have no control. The moment you hit her one time, as the religion allows you, because one thing I want you guys to understand, many of those people are not using the American law to raise the family. They are using their religious background, whether you are Muslim or you are Christian. Okay? And now,